We are still here at the Union buildings. As you are aware that the state visit was supposed to start at 10, but you are aware that yesterday Parliament had its own program, and as you know that the arms of state are independent, there was no way government could ask Parliament to postpone those important activities yesterday in terms of the vote of no confidence against the Speaker that didn't go through, and also a vote on Phala. But then the ministers had to fly back to Pretoria, and with flights and currently with SAA not having many flights and we struggling with transport, particularly the air, they had to find different alternatives. But it gives us an opportunity for some of us, particularly on international matters, to be able to grab ministers as they arrive and perhaps look at other important issues or global matters. With me, I have the Minister of Finance. It's very difficult to get the Minister of Finance. He has just returned from Saudi Arabia, where he attended a very important conference in relation to financial systems around the world at a time where there are concerns on the banks, and he is going to lead a South African delegation in July to the G20 meeting in India. And of course, during the BRICS summit in August, he is going to play a very important role when the BRICS member countries are discussing issues related to finances and the economy. Good morning, Minister.
Good morning.
Ngiyezwa ukuthi uthi kimi uyaqala ukuhamba kule red carpet. Into esibili, you couldn't come on time ngoba wena it's the first time you are a member of parliament, so you had to vote. But here you are among the first who arrived.
Thank you. No, I mean, as you say, I've not been a member of parliament, so all of a sudden now I'm a member of parliament. I'm required to go to get stuck in Cape Town and be part of the people that are voting. So we flew up, I didn't sleep, I woke up at 4 a.m. For a 6 a.m. flight.
That's the role of a public servant or a person who's appointed by the masses to serve the nation. Minister, on a serious note, your trip to Saudi Arabia, it came at a time where the world is grappling with fear that the financial sector is going to be affected by what has happened in the Silicon Valley. The banks are now scrambling to ensure that they are not affected, they don't catch the fever. In terms of our banking system, this issue in particular, are we going to be affected? What are you doing to ensure that you cushion us?
Let me just say, to the extent that there could be a challenge, which we have had with smaller banks in any event. You must know we've had a problem with Teba Bank this year. We always have challenges with smaller banks. To the extent that we could have some challenges with smaller banks, I cannot attribute that to the global spillovers. So far we've had no indication of those global spillovers in the South African system.
Now, turning to other global matters, the president of China, Xi Jinping, had a meeting with the president of Russia. One issue that's dominating the news is a proposal to ensure that there's a different trading system. The dollar that has been dominant is being challenged. As South Africa, we have America as one of our largest trading partners. How are we going to approach the debate and the discussions around a dollar being a trading global currency, some countries phasing it out?
Look, the issue of the competition between the major powers about their currencies is an ongoing issue. For instance, as we speak, the Chinese have managed to make sure that in the IMF, the renminbi is also recognized as one of the currency. So there's always going to be that contestation for currency recognition for purposes of trading.
Minister, the other issue is that you will be going to the G7 in July in India.
G20.
G20, I'm talking about it, sorry, G20. What happened some few weeks ago? We saw the G20 converging and there was no agreement again on a text. Clearly, the global challenges, the war in Ukraine, continue to divide the globe.
No, we normally disagree on one paragraph. Since April last year, in the G20 meetings, we've always had disagreement on that paragraph.
What's that paragraph?
That paragraph is how do we frame what is our position on the Ukraine-Russian conflict. And as a result, since April last year, we've never had a common declaration. So what we've had is what is called a chairperson statement from which was Indonesia. The hosting country, Indonesia. Now Indians have taken over this year the presidency of G20. Next year is Brazil. 2025 is South Africa.
So do you think we will be able as South Africa to ensure that all member countries do agree on a tax just when we host?
No, I don't know what would have happened by then, because we're quite aware that behind the scenes there are a lot of discussion about a peaceful settlement of the conflict. I can't predict that by 2025 that conflict would not have been resolved. Assuming that is not resolved and this issues continue to emerge, I think this notion of a chairperson statement has sit comfortable with everybody.
Minister, let's talk about South Africa. We saw the stats yesterday, quite disturbing, and predictions that the central bank doesn't have any choice but to increase the repo rate, even though we don't know how. But as a minister, during these difficult times, the nation is squeezed. People can't pay bonds, can't pay for the children in terms of their fees at varsities and higher education, particularly your middle class, but also ordinary poor people. They can't even put food on the table. The inflation, the food prices. What is South Africa doing, particularly Cabinet, to cushion the South African population? I mean, people are disgruntled. The electricity.
Let me just say part of the difficulty is people always assume that the South African government is not cushioning the impact on the poor. And I think we should get more information. Maybe we should blame government because we're not explaining ourselves properly. Let me just say, for instance, poor people have got what is called an indigent policy, which covers all these basic things they need to be funding. This financial year we're finishing, 70 billion rand is intended for that purpose. That excludes the 350 in the other interventions. So there's a whole range of a package of interventions which this government is doing. Again, given this cost of living, we have to bump up this indigent, including electricity and so on, increase what is being given to municipalities to cushion that impact. So there's a lot of things that we're doing which in totality have got an impact on that cost of living.
The missing middle or the middle class. Yeah. Are you doing something to help them? It looks like they are the forgotten.
You know, the middle class has got challenges global. It's not a South African phenomenon. And in most cases, you lack the instruments to do that. But what we've done in the budget, we've then said, to avoid this electricity prices which are rising. So all you need to do is to put a solar system and move off the grid. Once you do that, you'll get a tax credit. That's largely targeting the middle class.
But it's not enough, Minister. It's not enough.
There's never going to be enough. Let me just say, people, when they say it's not enough, but they say I must not tax them. So for me to be funding a number of things is sufficiently, I need to tax. Now, just to take that point, I need to tax. The question is it a right environment? So I've got sitting in this dilemma that given these challenges, I should not be increasing taxes, but at the same time, I can't continue to increase expenditures if I'm not increasing taxes. That's how government funds expenditures.
The working class, there was a proposal that perhaps they can be able to tap into a portion of their pension savings. And people were hoping that after COVID-19, that's what they will do, perhaps to pay off the houses, the critical issues that they have to service. It didn't happen.
Let me just say, things don't happen in South Africa as they wish, because the democratic processes require a massive consultation process when you change legislation, because we are required to change legislation. Now we're far down the line in making that changes. We've done a lot of consultation, and we're proposing that by the 1st of March 2024, that dispensation will kick in. But I must warn that that's going to depend on the liquidity of a specific pension fund. That decision is not mine. That decision is going to be the decision of the trustees, taking into account the strength of their pension fund.
And then, Minister, electricity, quite a thorny issue. We now have Minister responsible for electricity. We saw him moving around, visiting different plants, power stations. You have made resources available to deal with the debt of Eskom. Are you optimistic that we will get Eskom right? And as long as we have this problem, it will continue to derail the economic growth?
Let me deal with another question. We've had a mentality for the past 15 years of trying to fix Eskom, not to fix power to the grid. Those are two distinct things. And I think what we're trying to do now is to do a combination of both. Fix Eskom on one hand, get more capacity even from private sector, so that we should have what is called security of supply. I am confident that we're going to achieve those objectives.
And finally, Minister, looking forward to South Africa's fortunes, are you optimistic that at some point in time we will be able to achieve the much needed percentage in terms of the economic growth? Right now, it's too little, it's nothing.
Let me just say, there's a correlation in my view between Eskom's performance and the economy. If you look at all our underperformance, it started with the global financial crisis, which coincided with Eskom's outages in 2008. And if you look at that, electricity trend is one that is impacting on growth largely. If I'm quite convinced if we can get the security of supply of electricity, we'll be able to get our economy on the right track.
Thank you so much, Minister, for your time.
Thank you.
All the best. Your first appearance, and I hope you will be able to enjoy.
Thank you very much.
That was the finance minister speaking to us about the current issues, but I think a takeaway for me is the minister saying that the issue of power supply is derailing the economic growth. And with all the interventions, the minister is confident that things will be better, and of course we'll see a better economic growth. But don't forget that there are also external factors. And back to you in studio, Naledi and Desiree.